So it is my pleasure to have Ryan presenting from Worldview today. Ryan, in case you didn't know, these are the Globe United States water coolers, and we just gather. It's low pressure, obviously. It's like a water cooler, so we're just meeting up at the water cooler to talk about ideas, and then we see what happens there. So we ask people to present just, their stuff for a few minutes, and then we have time for questions. And usually it's just like this mini professional development, but we hope something comes of it for the next step. So it's really just to get our minds thinking about something new. And I know we do have some educators here too. So from what I understand, Worldview is a super great tool. So again, we're all friends here. So I really appreciate you just stepping in at the last minute and doing this. This is basically what happens at a water cooler though. So
Sure. Well, hopefully we can live up to the expectations here. And yeah, I mean, we from the Worldview team showed up because we are interested to hear your feedback and your usage on it. So this is our chance, I guess, to shape some of that more proactively. So I'm presenting on Minnie's behalf. These are her slides, and I'm sure she'd do a better job of presenting them, but she got back from a very jet lagged trip. So she said she'd rather I present it. So Minnie, feel free to jump in if I botch these. My name is not Minnie Wong. My name is Ryan Bowler. We both work together, though, on the Worldview project, as well as Angela Lee, who's also on this call. And look at this. These slides are very recent, too. That's great. So these are a couple weeks old. So let's see. Why don't we get started? We can go to the next slide here. Overview. We'll talk about what our Earth Science mission is, what EOSDIS is, what our project here, Worldview and Gibbs, what do we provide, and some key features. So next slide, please. I'm sure many of you are familiar with the Earth Science missions that we have going on. We have many that are have been operating for a long time, many new ones, and a lot coming up. So this is, I've been at NASA for over 20 years, and it's always so exciting because we have such a rich stream of data sets that we archive, so many different ways we collect the data, so many different things you can do with it. And so that's been our fun challenge working in our organization, is to be able to try to lower the barriers to usage and provide useful tools that other people can use to meet their needs. So science is obviously a main driver of what we do. Applied sciences like managing wildfires, monitoring air quality. Education is a hugely important part of what we do as well. So we'll get to Worldview in a minute, so we'll talk about that. But this is, these are the missions that we operate, and we have a lot of data to deal with. So next slide, please. So yeah, dealing with that data. We are part of the EOSDIS, the Earth Observing System Data and Information System. We are responsible for processing, archiving, disseminating that vast collection of data that I mentioned. Most of it's satellite. We also do airborne campaigns and some ground-based missions, as well as socioeconomic data. We on Worldview and Gibbs are the imagery visualization components of EOSDIS. And that's sort of a high-level data flow here at the bottom, showing where data comes in from the satellites, archived at EOSDIS. We convert that data into these imagery, like optimized imagery formats, including these tile pyramids, which maybe we'll get to in a minute. And then we distribute basically imagery efficiently to various clients. Worldview is one of them. But these services are open for anybody to use. So if you want to build your own custom clients or use your own geographic information system client, or just scrape the imagery down with scripts, you're also encouraged and welcome to do that. We have documentation on how to do that. Okay, so that's the high-level overview. Next one, thanks. Okay, so Worldview and Gibbs specifically, like we mentioned, that's for doing data visualization. So we're going to provide a visual-first approach to finding and using those Earth observations. Worldview is a web app that lets you use a mobile phone or tablets or desktop. Our usage is probably, last time I checked, it's about 60 to 70% desktop, and then the rest mobile. And the idea is you can interactively browse imagery in near real time and the entire historical archive. So near real time in this case is about 3 hours or less of the time that the satellite was observed the data to actually being available in this system. So that can be helpful for sort of rapid responses to certain things, events like wildfires. You can see that as a middle example there. Worldview uses the GIBS, which is Global Imagery Browse Services. That is a set of web services that lets anybody download the imagery, including Worldview. So Worldview is just one client on top of GIBS. GIBS has about, right, last time I checked, it's about 115,000 users per day. Worldview is on the 10,000 users or so per day scope. So like I said, Worldview is just part of what GIBS offers, but it's the one that we build here in-house for other people to use. Likewise, there's Worldview Snapshots, which lets you download it's designed to be a lightweight visualization client. So if you're only if you're limited in bandwidth because you're on a field campaign or your connection is not very broad, then that lets you just get what you need and move on. So next slide, please. So our imagery is available in 4 different map projections. We have 3 of them shown here. There's geographic on the far left, which is a lat-long projection, which you I'm sure have all seen. But we also, a lot of these satellites that we have orbit from pole to pole, which means we get great coverage at the poles, even better actually in many cases than the geographic area. And so we can monitor things like monitor things at the poles, especially things like sea ice. So we have some neat visualizations there. Let's see. So we have mostly it's imagery data products that we provide visualizations of. We also have some vector products, things like the most used one is fire data products, where you can click on individual points of fire observations, and it'll give you some information about each of those points, including things like how confident are we that that's actually a fire, how powerful is that fire, when exactly that fire was observed, and so on. In terms of spatial resolution, we go from 30 meters per pixel, which is the Landsat sort of scale resolution, to the MODIS scale, which is more like the 375 meter, and then there's other many coarser projection or coarser resolution products as well. We have some geostationary imagery in here as well from NOAA, thanks to our partners there, and also at JAXA. So we also get imagery that's available every 10 minutes. The geostationary that goes east goes west, Himawari 8. There's that, and like I've said, there's a near real-time imagery element to that as well. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so we have different imagery types. There's the sort of base layer types that we have that are opaque. And sort of meant for just a straight up visual interpretation. So on that bottom left, we have, this is a true color version of our corrected reflectance product. I think that's our most popular product. And that sort of gives you the impression of what you would see if you were in space looking down, what would you see? But we have over 1,000 other kinds of products as well, including things like on the right, that's looking at chlorophyll A from SOMI MPP VIIRS. And so those kind of products often have a color palette, so you can get a specific kind of measurement of, in this case, how much chlorophyll is there over these different areas. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is mentioned the vector things, the vector features, and this sort of illustrates what I mentioned before, where you can click on individual vector points, where you can get additional information about those points once you click on them. Okay, so some specific features. I think actually this first one, I don't know if we have any demos in here. We might. which this first feature is probably very relevant to the educational community, because we try to provide guidance on things like how to use Worldview, how to visualize certain layers, and then looking at specific natural events and how we monitor them over time. So if we don't have a video of that, then we can give a demo, because I think that one's really helpful. We also let users create their own animations. That's particularly useful for things like geostationary animations, or looking at wildfire progressions. We've got a comparison feature in there as well, lets you do the classic sliding back and forth before and after, or looking at one product compared to a different product. We also allow users or other organizations to embed Worldview into their own webpage. So similar to Google Maps, how you can embed Google Maps in your own website, you can do the same thing with Worldview. So, and you can customize that to your specific needs. So if you want to have a specific kind of demonstration on your webpage, we encourage you to do that. We have a listing of natural events that are regularly updated. So you can look at our events feature, and it'll show you oftentimes things like the most recent hurricanes that are going on, and fires and floods and so forth. And if you want to get to the actual data that's being visualized here, there's also a data download capability that hands you off to a sort of sibling tool called Earth Data Search, which lets you download the data that was used to generate the imagery that you're seeing in the app. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is the thing I mentioned about being great for, in my opinion at least, education. When you first launch the app, you get this splash screen that says "Welcome to Worldview," and it lists a series of stories in these sort of square panels here. And can you tell, is this, maybe Minnie, you can help, is this an animation or is this just a static slide? It looks like it's just a static, okay, static slide, Minnie says in chat. Okay, got it. Okay, so maybe we can give a demo at the end of this, but the idea is each of these tells a different story. And if you've seen the Esri feature called Story Maps, it's very similar to that, which lets you sort of step through one step at a time, showing you different points on the map, different kind of visualizations, different natural events. And the idea being, you know, we've got, like I said, over 1,000 products looking at decades of imagery. So one of our goals of making this feature was we don't want to just expect users know what to look for, because there's, you know, there's a lot. So this sort of guides you along different different types of things. One being the most recent one we put up there is about atmospheric rivers, showing how that's affected the west coast of the United States last winter, how much rainfall that dropped, and all the sort of downstream effects on that in terms of how much snowfall they got in the Sierra Nevadas, how the reservoirs refilled a lot, how formerly dry lake beds were now actually lake beds again. So there's a lot of neat imagery that we can see in there. Oh, including my favorites there, you can see a wildflower bloom in the desert. It was that wide that you can see that from this demo. So maybe we'll go through that at the end. So next slide, please. Oh, and then also how to use the app itself. We have a tour story for that, which is kind of a special case where that one actually sort of walks you through each of the features. So if you're not familiar with Worldview, that will step you piece by piece through the app. Oh, and look at that. So sorry, I'm not that familiar with these slides. But yeah, so this is the atmospheric river tour story I mentioned. We can step through that in real time at the end, but you can see here, this is the example of, you have this comparison slider that it drops you into this particular state of the app where you can then compare before and after. This is that formerly dry lake bed that I mentioned that turns into an actual lake bed. And you can do the comparison there, and it gives you a description on the right side about what you're looking at there, basically, what happened and what kind of data products are being shown. Okay, so like we mentioned, there's over 1,000 different kinds of products that are available. Sorry, 1,000 different products divided into different types of products. So we divided those in two main ways. You can see it says hazards and disasters there is this main tab we're looking at. So that's broken up by things like air quality, ash plumes, fires, dust storms, and so on. But we also have this science disciplines tab. So if you're looking at things like you care about the atmosphere, or you care about the oceans or land or the cryosphere, they're broken up by that. So that's, we can get into a little bit of demo with that, but yeah, that's sort of the overview of how that works. So next slide, please. Okay, this is the animation feature. This is one of our most popular animations. The geostationary satellite goes west, has an amazing view of the Hunga Tonga volcano, where you can see it every 10 minutes, and just the scale, the scope is pretty dramatic. And that's another one of our tour stories in Worldview that you can click right on and go to. So maybe we can look at that one in a minute too, or you can go to that link. So next slide, please. Okay, this is another demo of the comparison tool. This is, as you've probably seen elsewhere, you can drag that slider and look at, in this case, I think that's a before and after, looking at a particular fire event here. Okay, oh, and here's the embeddable widget idea with your web page there, nicely written in cursive on the left. But it's also been used in other places, like on the right there. That's actually used as part of a story map, an Esri story map on the right. And here's an example of looking at the events feature in Worldview. There's an events tab on the left sidebar there that lets you look at individual natural events. You can filter them by different event types, things like dust and haze, sea and lake ice, severe storms, snow, and look through history as well. So it defaults by showing you what are active events happening right now, but you can also go back in history, and as far back as January 1st, 2000, but not all the event categories have been populated that far back, but things like natural tropical cyclones, I believe, have been populated that far back. And then, like I mentioned earlier, if you want to download data, there's a download data tab that lets you, if you want to do some analysis on the data itself, then this lets you get to that underlying data set. Okay, so here's a couple links to learning more, including a webinar that we've given previously. Yeah, I guess these slides are in the chat here if you wanted to check them out yourself. And let's see, I guess that's the end of the slides. There's a link to Worldview. Oh, I forgot to mention, almost everything we do here is open source as well. So if you are a developer or know somebody who is, then that code is available to you as well. So then we can show a quick demo if somebody wants to drive. I guess Jennifer, if you got yeah, if you just want to click on that tab here, we'll show you one of the tour stories here as part of a demo. So let's see if you, yeah, so this is the splash screen I mentioned. It gives you those tour stories. Let's go through the atmospheric rivers tour story. That's one of the more recent and dramatic ones that we have here. So it'll pan and zoom the map to the area of interest and the date of interest. It'll give you this description on the right about some background. Click on the right arrow there. It'll take you to the next step. And what it should do here is show you about the precipitation at that snapshot in time. Looking at one of our precipitation data sets. This one's called iMerge. If you click again, this should give you a geostationary animation. It'll preload this here. And then play that back. That'll be every 10 minutes for this course of, for this time range. And you can see that really kind of looks like a river to me there flowing into California. So I'm only catching the chat here and there, but Mike, I saw your question there about creating your own tour steps. That's a really interesting question. So we curate the tours ourselves here. But if you have tour ideas and are familiar with different products or things you want to show off, then that's something that we can work with you on to include. But that's an interesting point. I mean, maybe we can consider how to make this a self-service thing so other people can create their own tours. I think we may have discussed that in the past. I think there's some challenges in terms of are we now responsible for the content that other people post, and how do we manage, defacing the site and all that? So I think we maybe steered away from that in the past, but maybe we should discuss that a bit more. Okay, next step here. We'll go through the steps, and then we can have all the discussion we need here. So let's see. This is showing off the before and after tool here. If you drag that slider left and right, this is the before and after snowfall there in the Sierra Nevadas. This is that True Color product I mentioned. So this is a natural color view of that particular area from, this is just a few weeks apart. This is 2 weeks apart from each other. So pretty dramatic there. Go to the next step there, please. Oh, and this is looking at a false color view of that same, the same thing, except now it's maybe a little bit easier to distinguish between the snow and the land. It's the same dates, same instruments, same satellite, but yeah. This gives you a way to also show off the different kind of products that we have. Yep, next step, please. This is another kind of product. This is looking at snow mass before and after from our SMAP mission. Next step, please. This is looking at the consequences of all that rain. This is looking at soil moisture before and after. We love this comparison tool. It's so dramatic, but it gives you really a sense of how much water fell during that time and how wide that range was that it fell.
I hope I'm doing a good job for everybody. My tendency when I'm driving is to, try and move it myself. So let me know if you want to see something.
This is perfect. No, thank you. You're doing a great job. Thank you, Jennifer. All right. Yeah, this is the one I mentioned that wasn't a lake for a long time. And it became a lake after this storm. So Central Valley, California here. And this is a flood product. I'm sorry, it's a water extent, surface water extent product we're showing there on the right. So we can see the extent of the flooding there. I think we're getting close to the wildflowers and reservoirs here. Yeah, this is one of the reservoirs that they have there. Another dramatic before and after of how different it was. They were in a drought for many years there, and no longer, different stages of drought, I suppose. I don't think this one storm solved all of their problems, but it sure helped. Yeah, this is another reservoir comparison. Okay, this is one of my favorites now. So, so that giant red patch there is not normally there on the right, but that is a giant wildflower bloom, as well as I guess actually all the extra yellows and oranges there in the middle of the map are also not usually there, but all the rainfall turned the desert into a massive wildflower area. One more step, it might be more wildflowers. Yep, it is. I think this is comparing two super blooms to each other. one super bloom from 2020 and another one from 2023.
Okay, I just figured out I could actually move the image too.
Oh, you can. It's meant to be, yeah. So you can interact with the whole app, and consequence free. You can always reset it by going back and forth in the steps, and it'll reset you to where you are.
Learn something new every day.
Yeah, that's the idea. So yeah, so there's a demo. I mean, I guess I would encourage you to check out the other tour stories, and because they each show different kinds of things. But yeah, that's the overview. So let's see here. Open it up to questions then.
And I'll just add that I use this with physics teachers with air quality. So just an FYI, because a lot of times it's hard to engage physics teachers in Globe. And because of the imagery, there was a huge level of interest when I brought up imagery. And I think I actually showed the Worldview air quality one, and they were super excited to see that.
That's great to hear. So this is at which level then? Is it high school physics?
High school physics.
Okay, cool.
Yes. So I see questions. So we will, if you're okay with it, I would love to take some questions.
Sure, fire away.
John, you're first.
Hi everybody. I just caught a little bit of the presentation. Sorry, I had to get out of a meeting, but it was great. I liked it. And actually, speaking about physics, I also teach physics and astronomy at EPCC. And kind of like what Jen was saying, it's really good. I've noticed that when I have my students and we go out and we use the Globe Observer app, sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes when the satellite match with the data that my students get comes to them, sometimes you'll have the Worldview option, or the satellite was in the right place where we get this kind of overview. And it's kind of great that we can actually use some of the tools that are with Worldview, and it's been pretty helpful when we do get that in our satellite data response emails. And to utilize it for physics is actually brilliant, because I mean Jen was talking about air quality. We're looking at clouds. We're looking at different times of the year of basically, related to the thermodynamics and whatnot. And what are some of your visual cues that are you going to pick up in this kind of a display that the Worldview has? And so I think it is one of the great tools. I think there's another one that kind of also highlights it with where you have different band combinations.
Yeah.
Where you can really start to pick up. I don't know if I remember Worldview has that, but I remember one of them did. And but all the tools here are great for utilizing for physics, because it does touch on bringing up some, relating ground data and satellite data to really highlight the thermodynamic properties of a certain region, or taking a look at the overall fluid dynamics. So it's a great tool. Just want to add on to that.
Oh, thanks. I'm glad to hear that. Yeah. And so did you say there's a linkage then? You use the linkage between the Globe Explorer app and Worldview? It like drops you in directly to Worldview for that
Right.
same time and date?
Right. So sometimes you'll have on when we actually go out there. I mean, we'll get the MODIS or satellite data, the visual and the IR, but every once in a while we'll have one that coincides. I forgot I think it is MODIS. We have the GOES satellite that we get, and then the MODIS. Then we get that. Once we have that, it'll come out in Worldview, and then we'll actually look at El Paso, where I'm at, and then we'll actually see like in detail the cloud for the cloud cover at that time. And it's a great, kind of like what we're seeing right now, but for over our region. And it's really, really good. I mean, it really highlights, like I said, it's a great tool. Sometimes, once in a while we use it for astronomy to kind of compare it, looking at atmospheres of planets and whatnot. And we bring this into the classroom, and it's like, it's phenomenal, because it's one of those great tools that it's online, everybody can use it. And it's great. So we can actually, even for people online, it's great to actually connect, have people, go, side by side. They're on their computer, I'm on mine. We're looking at the same thing, and then they can play around. And a great way to actually communicate with different parts of the class. And one person does one thing, One person looks for another thing using the worldview. It's great. And like I said, it's just one of those things where it's really, really versatile in that respect when it comes to as a teaching tool.
That's awesome to hear. Thank you for sharing those experiences. And you mentioned astronomy, and actually, I want to show you one quick thing if you haven't seen it.
Sure.
Yeah, Jennifer, if you go back to reset the app like you did, and you have to click the Worldview logo. Oh yeah, or just do that. Either way, you go to the Night Lights tour story right there.
Oh wow, nice.
And there's one here. So actually, you can even see it in this one. You can see the aurora in some cases. You can see it at the top
Wow.
there. And so during area or times of high solar activity, then a lot of times you'll be able to see it in this nighttime imagery.
Oh
So
wow. Okay.
I think we even have a step in this tour story that highlights that. If you step through that quickly, might be able to find that. Yeah, if you step through, let's see, there's that. Keep going.
Nice.
Let's see here. I mean, this is actually one of my favorite products too. This is looking at fishing boats there in the Gulf of Thailand. All those little dots in the Gulf are.
That's it.
So
Wow.
this is a neat story too. But this is talking about power outages before and after. In Houston. But I think one of these does show an aurora, if I'm not mistaken. Keep going. There we go. This one. So,
oh wow.
And then often we'll link out to other stories that give you more context for what you're looking at. So, yeah, Jennifer, if you click on that Brilliant Borealis link there in that description on the right, that should give you the Earth Observatory, which is an awesome site. I'm sure you all are familiar with.
Right.
So it's a bit of a tangent. You mentioned astronomy, so I figured I would,
Okay.
mention this as sort of a, distant connection here to that.
Oh, that's great. Awesome. Thanks.
Sure.
All right, Larissa.
Oh, it's so great to listen all these conversations, and Jen, you're doing great work, job demonstrating it. Fantastic. I almost forgot my question. So, Ryan, you probably already done this. We all, at least most of us, would like to bring into the classroom and for teachers' professional development just really appreciation for data and data harvesting, understand the process of harvesting data, and basically at the same time, we would like to make sure that they understand the process of feeding data to some AI models. And I was just wondering if you're thinking or if you've done it, anywhere we can get help to really develop some very basic activities, how to really harvest this data and really feed into the. I don't know. Are you training any AI models in NASA applications? Maybe I don't know. Are there any specific data formats or standards that NASA follows when feeding data to AI systems? Something like that. Any thoughts on that regard? Because I just want to connect that not only just harvesting data, it's just by itself, it's a great experience for teachers, but I want to connect it to feeding it into the AI models. Thank you, Ryan.
Sure. Yeah, that's a good and really hot topic here. So we've just brought somebody on board about 8 months ago who's a specialist in AI and ML, and he's helping us figure out how we can expose this imagery to be more useful for AI ML purposes. There's been a lot of work in the field though, and people have scraped us for both. There's a MODIS foundation model, it's called, and then there's an HLS foundation model. And my understanding, my very rough understanding, is that they've done some training using these sort of very popular data sets. They've done some heavy lifting to basically pre-compute a lot of the common things that you would need to use those things for. And then you can build off of that. So it's called a foundation model because I guess you can build on top of that things like detecting natural events is a big thing, or looking at cloud patterns and trying to find similar cloud patterns over time, or dust storms, or whatever kind of thing you're searching on. So I guess that would be my first recommendation, is to check out those foundation models, to see if that's something that if you're trying to build an app off of NASA data for AI ML, that they've done a lot of the heavy lifting for you, and then you can sort of build from that.
Sure.
Otherwise, there's plenty of data scraping sort of things to be done that we probably haven't done enough of yet. But I'm happy to chat more with you too about it if there's a way that we can get you pointed in the right direction.
You did a great job just stepping in and presenting for us. So thank you so much, Ryan, and thank you to Minnie also for the slides, which were current and beautiful, and then just walking us through Worldview. I think that there's a huge opportunity here. So thank you again for coming. And thank you to everyone. It is 1 minute after the hour, whatever hour you are at because of your time zone. So thank you everyone for coming and spending some time with us.